Now you had the whole thing run by Rothschild banks. You've got all of these Western interests involved in it. You've got the same German family in charge of both countries. Come on, folks, wake up and smell the coffee. And now you've got the same banking dynasties, and they're doing the same thing. This whole war on terror is completely fake. And like I said earlier, it's exactly the same thing. Look, in Germany, you had Adolf Hitler. He burnt down his own Reichstag. He blamed it on a group he didn't like. He said the evidence would be produced later, but it never was. He used the event to decimate the German constitution. He introduced the Fatherland Security Act, and he used it as a pretext to wage war on other countries. And then the controllers, the same banking interests who were controlling Hitler during World War II, we saw these people do the same thing in America. They had the incident at the Twin Towers. It was blamed on a group that the government didn't like. The government told us that evidence would be produced later on, but it never has been. And in the meantime, the government used the event to decimate the United States Constitution, to introduce the Homeland Security Act, which they are now using as a pretext to wage war on other countries. Deja vu. It's exactly the same chain of events that took place in World War II. It's been staged by exactly the same people. The people who control all the banking systems in all Western countries. The same people who keep you enslaved to debt so that you'll never notice what's going on. And they feed you through a controlled media so you only get the news that they want you to hear. And all media sources, folks, every single one of them, there are only actually 6 corporations that control all mainstream media. And all of these 6 corporations get their news from one of 2 sources: Reuters or the Associated Press. Only when you look at the paperwork again, you find that Reuters actually owns the Associated Press. And Reuters was purchased by the Rothschild family in the late 1800s. So all you are getting is the Rothschilds' version of the news. All of these wars are fake, folks. Every single one of them. They are all being staged by the banks. It's simply a takeover of the world. And now they are trying to microchip you. And as I said last week on the show, your body is a biological computer. There is a rise in frequency happening on this earth. They are desperately trying to get microchips into you. Because once they get a microchip into you, not only do they control all of your money, they can turn things on and off at will. And you'll have to be scanned to go and purchase things. But they can also interfere with the computer. This is like hardwiring a virus into a computer. You cannot allow the people that are doing all of this. I mean, look at their track record. Look what these people have done to the world. Look at the corruption in governments that we've seen all through our life. Look at the suppression of information that we've seen from these people. Look at this corrupt monetary system. You seriously want to let these people put a microchip in your body? You're going to believe them when they tell you that it's for your best interests? If you really are going to do this, I would suggest very much that you have consumed far too much fluoride, my friends. So you see, we've got all these allied companies involved in World War II. DuPont was also involved. We've got the whole thing being run by Rothschild banks. And these are the same people who then went and set up the United Nations. They've used the United Nations to just continue it out across the rest of the globe. And they've kept all the people of Western countries completely oblivious to what's actually going on by the use of a controlled media and by use of all of the chemical neurotoxins that they tested in World War II on all the people in the prison camps. Fluoride and all the things that they put in your food. And there is, of course, another telltale sign as to the complete setup that World War II actually was. And that is, of course, Operation Paperclip. Now, Operation Paperclip I've talked about in my films. I'm sure if you just Google Operation Paperclip, you'll find out all about it. Operation Paperclip saw the removal of quite literally hundreds of key figures in the Nazi Empire. They were all smuggled out of Germany by way of the Vatican, and they were brought into America, and they were taken to South America. Now, very interestingly, when all of these people were smuggled out of Germany in Operation Paperclip, and I'm sure there were probably other operations as well. There was an awful lot of money that went missing. And these people weren't just war criminals that were running off to hide. They went off very, very wealthy people. They were smuggled out of Germany by sources very, very high in the American government and the Vatican. They were taken to special areas in South America, and some of them were set up in companies and corporations and think tanks and advisory committees within the United States. Some of them went to NASA. They went all over the place. They infiltrated very much into very, very high areas of the American government. Now, a lot of the technology the Germans were experimenting with in World War II was very esoteric technology. There's all sorts of videos you can find, there's documentation you can find, there's declassified documents you can find. There is even photographs and I believe video footage that you can find of circular flying craft that the Nazis were experimenting with in World War II. These things very much look like flying saucers. And you've got to remember that this was back in 1942, 1943. They were experimenting with these things. A lot of information came to light about these experiments, a lot more than we had when the Berlin Wall came down, because there were certain facilities that were behind the Berlin Wall in East Germany that the Russians had never bothered to look at. And it wasn't until the wall came down that Western researchers were able to get in there and to find out a little bit about these complexes that the Nazis had on that side of Berlin. And there is every evidence to indicate that they were very, very much experimenting with what we would term UFOs. Now, taking into account that many of these high-level Nazis, these top-level Nazis, were smuggled out of Germany and taken to South America and to places within America, that they had an enormous amount of finances with them because there was an enormous amount of money that went missing. Well, it certainly puts an interesting light on much of the UFO phenomena. Now, as far as UFOs go, I know that there are strange craft that fly in the sky. I've seen them myself, and I'm not one that is prone to hallucinations. I had an incident in 2000 where myself and 6 other people, during a morning break at work, looked up into the sky, and there was a circular craft with a dome on top and a dome underneath, emitting a bright pulsing light. This was a textbook UFO, and it was just there. It was a good distance off because of the amount of atmospheric distortion I could see between myself and the craft. It was visible for at least 5 minutes, and then it simply switched off like someone had flicked a light switch. And I saw that with 6 other people, so I have no doubt that these craft exist. My question is to who powers them? Where do they come from? Are they aliens? Are they from around here? And I would suggest that quite a lot of them are actually from around here. Now, I've had a lot of people talking about the fact that there might be a disclosure on this topic soon. Well, folks, I've been waiting for disclosure on the UFO issue for a good 30 years now. I've been hearing that there's one very close for a very long time. So whether there's a disclosure or not, I wouldn't let it distract you from the events that we're facing around us in the present day. I would suggest dealing with the now, because once we deal with the now, disclosure will be a natural event. It will just happen by matter of course. Because ultimately, it doesn't really matter where these craft come from for now. Even who actually carried out 9/11. It doesn't really matter at this stage. What matters at this stage is seeing what's going on around us now and doing something to address the problems that we face now. Because once we remove ourselves from fear, once we embrace a state of unconditional love and realize the connection we've got to each other, and once we stand up for what's right and fix the system that we are currently enslaved to, then all the answers to all of our questions will make themselves apparent just by default. Once we all stand up and say no to the system that we're facing, once we all stand up and start to do the right thing by each other and everybody else, all of our questions will be answered as just a natural course of events. That's the way it'll work. But we first have to remove ourselves from fear, and we have to stand up and address the situation. Because the situation that we're facing is, well, it's quite desperate, folks. things are getting very, very close. We're in the final minutes of the final hour, and we need to take matters in hand very, very soon. And we need to understand that it can be done in a peaceful manner. It has to be done in a peaceful manner, because that is the only way that will achieve any real success. And look at the situation the world is now in. The final cards are being played right now.